and welcome back to the Fundamentally Fit podcast with me, your host, Andy Strong, and a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to wherever it is that you are listening to this podcast. Hope you're all having a fine week. Hope you're getting out there, getting active, keeping moving, eating well, eating clean, and I hope you're not all feeling a little bit too jaded with the Christmas parties as we get into full swing. I've certainly seen a couple of clients this week who have they've gone very hard, and it's only the first week of December. Today we're having a bit of a break from the Christmas themed podcast, and that is because of something that's been in the press this week, something that I really want to talk about, and it's all to do with an article on the BBC website. It's the one that I've pulled off, but I've seen this in other places, and it's all to do with what's been classed as a watershed moment in the treatment for type 2 diabetes, and there is a new study claiming the reversal of type 2 diabetes by the use of 200-calorie drinks and basically going onto a liquid-based diet. Now, I know this is going to get jumped on. It's going to be used by lots of people that unfortunately in my industry who know very little about diabetes to try and promote this, and I want to talk about it now because there's lots of very significant drawbacks to this approach, and I'm going to try my hardest not to go off on a big rant, but I read this and I feel incredibly passionate about it, and I'm going to share that with all of you lovely people and hopefully give you an important perspective, even if you do or don't have diabetes, or if it's something that's a concern for you. Do stay tuned for this podcast because this covers lots of other areas, and it's something that I think everybody should be better educated and informed upon. Now, before we do that, I've been in the big smoke. I've been in the city today, been meeting my business coach. So we sat down and we had a few hours strategizing 2018, setting goals, setting up some plans for next year when I launch my online coaching platform, which is coming on really, really well at the moment. So setting some goals, picked up a few good tips and tricks on how to set your goals and things as well. So I'm going to be sharing some of those in the new year to help all of you lovely people as well, to get you started for 2018. Don't wait till then. If you've got some goals, get working on them now. But what I just wanted to share was that as a professional coach and health practitioner, obviously this is what I do for my business and my career. I just wanted to share that actually I have a coach, and that's something that I think is important. I value having a coach in the opinion of someone who is an expert in different fields, somebody who is looking externally from my own situation and actually is able to offer me advice and clarity on direction and how I should maybe approach things. And I think as someone who is presenting themselves as a coach like I am, I think it's important for people out there to realize I have a coach as well, because I don't expect to know everything, and other people have really, really beneficial things that they can kind of bring to the party, so to speak. So never think that every one person has all the answers. So as we were talking about being critical last week, I have a coach. I recommend that you get a coach as well, whether that's to help with your health and fitness. So I certainly would love to help you with that, or if it's developing in other areas, mindset, in terms of your own business, your career goals, all of those different things. Having a coach is a really, really beneficial thing to do. Right. Okay, I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to try not to rant, and I'm going to talk you through this study and try and give you some perspective, because this one has made me just a touch on the angry side. Right. So published on the BBC website on the 6th of December. The headline is "I beat type 2 diabetes with the I beat type 2 diabetes with 200-calorie drinks." Now, this basically is citing a study, and it says nearly half of the patients have reversed type 2 diabetes in a watershed trial, say doctors in Newcastle and Glasgow. People spent up to 5 months on a low-calorie diet of soups and shakes to trigger massive weight loss. Isabel Murray, 65, who weighed 15 stone, lost over 4 stone or 25 kilos and no longer needs diabetes pills. She says she's got her life back. Now, the charity Diabetes UK says the trial is landmark landmark and has the potential to help millions of patients. Now, Isabel was one of 298 people on the trial. Her blood sugar levels were too high, and every time she went to the doctors, they increased her medication. So she went on an all-liquid diet for 17 weeks, giving up cooking and shopping. She even ate apart from her husband, Jim. Instead, she had 4 liquid meals a day. It's hardly MasterChef, and a sachet of powder is stirred into water to make a soup or a shake. They contain about 200 calories, but it's also the right balance of nutrients. Isabel told the BBC it was relatively easy and you don't have to think about what you eat. Once the weight has been lost, dietitians then help patients introduce healthy, solid meals. Eating normal food is the hardest bit, says Isabel. Now, the trial results simultaneously published in the Lancet Medical Journal and presented at the International Diabetes Federation showed the following. 46% of patients who started the trial were in remission a year later. 86% who lost 15 kilos or 2 stone 5 pounds or more put their diabetes into remission. Only 4% went into remission with the best treatments currently used. One final thing, however, doctors are not calling this a cure. If the weight goes back on, then the diabetes will return. I will never go there again, says Isabel. So far, I've kept the weight off for the last 2 years. Now, I've read that more or less verbatim from their website, and we're now going to break it down and talk through this. So, on the one hand, anything that helps somebody reverse their diabetes, to a certain extent, is a positive thing. Diabetes is a really serious condition, and it is vastly misunderstood or lack of comprehension from most people that have it or in the general public. It is a very serious condition, and it requires management and lifestyle change. Predominantly type 2 diabetes is linked to lifestyle change, although there can be genetic factors involved as well. But for most people, this is down to your lifestyle. It's the foods that you eat, it's the volume of these foods that you eat, and it's also down to your lifestyle, how active you're being, and how well you're being able to manage your weight. Now, for these individuals that have been on this trial, who went on this 17-week liquid-only diet, being able to reverse their diabetes, lose the weight, is a really good thing. It's a really good thing for them because it means their overall health is now dramatically improved. They've done it in a very extreme way, and I wouldn't recommend that for most people, but they've done it under medical supervision, and they've done it in a way that now means that their diabetes is under control, and that's a really good thing. Now, putting that to one side, the danger of this type of approach is that basically it isn't going to help the vast amounts of people that they're claiming that it is. And I'm going to give you some sound reasoning as to why I personally think this is the case. Now, let's go through this line by line. This headline starts off, nearly half of patients who have reversed type 2 diabetes in a watershed trial, say doctors in Newcastle and Glasgow. Now, nearly half the patients have reversed their type 2 diabetes. That means that more than half that went on this trial didn't. So that means more than half of the 298 people did not reverse their type 2 diabetes. Now, that doesn't mean that they haven't lost weight and they haven't done well, but it means that there is still a significant problem for most of these people to adhere to this extreme type of approach. And that is where I take my great challenge and my great problem with this type of approach. It's highly restrictive. Most people simply cannot stick to a diet that is this extreme. You're only looking at around 800 calories a day, which is going to be below most people's basal metabolic rate, or BMR. What this means is that they're not going to be getting enough of the nutrients that they need, and it also means that they're not going to be able to exercise or get out and move very much because they're not going to have the energy. This means that for the 17 weeks they're not going to be able to do very much else either, and some people, I would imagine, will probably be on this program a little bit longer as well. Now, I also have real issue with this type of approach because it also sells into the mentality that you get one of these conditions and you can just basically go on a highly restrictive diet. And I've spent many months and years trying to educate people as to why these types of approaches are not useful for long-term approach. And if they start seeing ones like this now being published because it helps type 2 diabetes, everybody's going to think that that approach is okay across the board, whether it be for diabetes or whether it is following another diet approach where they're taking a shake or a juice or a pill or something else. It isn't a smart way to change your lifestyle. Now, because type 2 diabetes is so heavily linked to lifestyle change, and one of the biggest things in this report is every time Isabel says she went to the doctor, they increased her medication. Now, the reason that they would have been increasing Isabel's medication is because every time she went to the doctors, her blood sugar would have been higher. That's because Isabel wasn't taking the steps to manage the condition, to change her diet and her lifestyle. And I am not putting that all at Isabel's door. What I am saying is there's not enough support in general in the NHS, because most people that get type 2 diabetes get sent out the door with a prescription for metformin, and that is the end of it. And I know that to be the case because that's happened to members of my own family. It's a disgrace, and it makes me incredibly angry that that is how most people get treated with this condition. Now, unfortunately, if every time Isabel goes back and she's not been making these changes, then yes, her medication requirement is going to go up, and that's not helpful for her long-term health. But I don't feel putting her on a highly restrictive 200-calorie drink-based liquid diet where she can't integrate any of her eating habits with the rest of her family is a sensible way to get her to think about her relationship with food. It's going to mean that her mindset now, because she's lost all this weight, is heavily ingrained in a process and a method that is linked to being highly restrictive. That is not a good positive message to send to anybody. Now, if there was more education up front, we might have less people in this situation. Or if the government was stronger with the food manufacturers in the first place, who are allowed to pump so much of the sugar and fat and things into the food that we eat, we wouldn't have the problem and the burden that's now being placed on the NHS. So this is a real issue. I take a breath because I'm getting angry. It's going to be one of the more serious podcasts. Now, this was a 17-week based diet, and basically you give up all cooking. You don't need to do any shopping, but unfortunately, in Isabel's case, she had to eat separately apart from her husband Jim, because she couldn't. I'd imagine, doesn't elaborate, but I'd imagine she couldn't cope to be around people eating because she was on this liquid-based diet. Can you imagine being on a liquid-based diet for that long? Highly restrictive. You're not going to feel good. Now Isabel has lost the weight, and I commend her for that. But can you imagine being on a liquid-based diet for 17 weeks? That is a miserable existence. This is not a quick, easy fix. Now, one of the things she says is it's hardly MasterChef. A sachet of powder is stirred into water to make a soup or shake. They contain about 200 calories and also the right balance of nutrients. She told the BBC it was relatively easy. You don't have to think about what you eat. Now, that line there is the one that I am. It's the one that I'm most frustrated about. It's the one that I think sums up this entire story, and the biggest issues around this story is that this approach doesn't require you to think about what you eat. Now, in terms of her health, I totally get it. If she's come off her medication, that's a really, really good thing. But my argument is, if you're giving a product like this, or a treatment, whatever you want to call it, to an individual who has lifestyle issues, in the majority of cases, statistically speaking, and you're giving them a product that is a non-thought process based product that you just, you take the sachet, then what is to stop those individuals putting all that weight back on? Because they've not learnt anything. They've not learnt where they were going wrong before. They've not learned how to balance their diet. Now, it says that they get support with a dietitian afterwards, but I very much doubt that there's funding there to have the proper level of support that they really need to not put this weight on. Now, again, I commend Isabel. Says she's not put this weight back on for 2 years. That's really, really good. That's really good. And I absolutely commend her for that, because losing the weight's clearly given her the motivation to go and find the answers to these things. But we need to empower people to go and find those answers first before we put them onto this highly restrictive diet, because for so many people that won't be the case. And as we already know from the outcome of this, of the 300 odd people that did it, more than half weren't able to reverse their diabetes, and more than likely have put the weight back on that they did lose. Now, I haven't been able to sit down and read the full study, and I will, because I'd like to know the answer to a few other things as well. Was this study independent, or was it being funded by a certain manufacturer that produced these 200-calorie drinks? What was in the 200-calorie drinks? How did they come to decide what should be in them? Who produced them? Who funded this study? Was it a third party that actually wanted a certain outcome? And all of these questions are really, really important. And I've seen this actually before, and the reason I think that this type of approach doesn't work, and why I think this type of approach is potentially dangerous or really, really unhelpful, is in my own family. Now, I had a family member that quite a long time ago went on to a medical drugs trial, and they had a significant amount of weight to lose for very serious, very important medical reasons. That losing weight was deemed, the loss of weight was deemed to be more important for their overall long-term health and immediate health than using a more traditional weight loss approach. And actually losing the weight would have benefited them much, much more. Now, to do this, the medical trial involved them taking a drug called Xenical. And Xenical, as some of you may or may not be familiar with, basically is a fat loss pill. And what it does is it stops your body from absorbing fat. And when you take the tablet and you eat a food with fat in it, it basically isn't broken down. It's just kind of flushed straight through the system, and you have quite uncontrollable and orange oily stools for quite a long time while you're on the medication. And the idea is it teaches you to not eat certain foods that kind of fatty foods particularly that trigger the response in the bowel. And by doing this, fat is the highest calorie of the macronutrients. We have our carbohydrates, our proteins, and our fats. Our carbohydrates and our proteins both contain 4 calories per gram, and our fat contains 9 calories per gram. So if you reduce the amount of fat in your diet with nothing else, you're going to lose weight because it's more than double of the other two. And I'm not going to confuse it or go into too much detail on that today. Now, I know this approach doesn't work because for the whole time that this family member was on this, they lost a stack load of weight. However, it didn't encourage them to learn about their diet. It didn't encourage them to be necessarily much more active than they were before. It didn't encourage them to learn how to cook and be self-sufficient in the way that they needed to. And also, it didn't encourage them to maintain any healthy habits once they'd stopped taking the medication. So once the trial came to an end, they hadn't changed enough of their habits, and they weren't getting the response because they weren't taking the drugs anymore. And what happened is, as soon as the drugs trial came to an end and they stopped taking the Xenical, they slowly, progressively put that weight back on. So I don't see that the vast majority of people taking a rapid weight loss liquid-only diet will be any different. So while it is commendable that those people have lost weight, and a lot of them kept the weight off, which is really good, I don't think this sends the right message to people. It says that we can take a rapid weight loss liquid diet approach to lose weight when our health starts to suffer. It means that people will feel like, if I get diabetes, I'll just go on that liquid diet and I'll reverse it. It makes people think that these conditions are just something that you can turn around overnight, and it doesn't get you engaged with your broader health, your broader diet. And ultimately, that is what we all need to get much, much better at if we're going to be in the position where we can have a healthier population. Also requires the government to be firmer with the food manufacturers and not enable them to pump our food full of sweeteners, full of sugar, full of fat, and actually be a little bit firmer with them and actually on how unhealthy they're making the population. We need better education across the board to help people understand how to manage their diets better. I am just one person. I am a drop in the ocean in my efforts to help people understand their diets and their health better and remove the confusion that's out there. And studies like this and potential products like this, I feel, create negative relationships, and they don't teach people the things they need to learn. And ultimately, unfortunately, the unescapable truth, if you really want it, if you want to be healthy, if you want to be fit, you've got to work for it. There is no getting away from it. You've got to prep your food, you've got to plan your week, you've got to learn to cook, and you've got to do it small step by small steps, one habit at a time, and it's going to take you a while to do it. There's no getting away from it. But that is the only lasting way to have the confidence, to have the health, and to have a healthy, happy, balanced lifestyle that's reflective of where you want to be. We are addicted to quick fixes. We are addicted to approaches that kind of take the thinking out of it. And unfortunately, if you want to be healthy and you want a healthy, balanced lifestyle, you've got to do the work. It's the one thing in life that you cannot buy. You simply cannot buy. You can get the coaching and support from people like me, but ultimately where the rubber meets the road is hard work, consistency, and a relentless drive to actually put yourself first. And I don't think that products like this or treatment like this is teaching people the things they need to be happy and healthy for the future. And I'm going to wrap up there because I'm going to turn into a massive rant. But this is an emotive topic. And if you're listening to this and you've got diabetes and you think I'm totally wrong, then jump on the chat. Let's have a conversation. Tell me why you think this is a good approach. Why maybe you might want to try it. Tell me how the NHS maybe supported you when you were diagnosed. How they didn't. And actually, just let's start a conversation. Do you think that I'm completely wrong? Do you think I'm right? Do you think that this approach is unhelpful? And if you've maybe been on a juicing type diet or a shake based diet in the past, doesn't have to be diabetic related or diabetes related. What were your thoughts on that? What were your feedbacks? How long were you able to sustain that approach for? Could you go 17 weeks? And how do you feel about maybe separating yourself from your family in terms of your eating for 17 weeks? Do you think that will build the type of relationship with your food and the type of environment where you could be successful for the long term? Or do you think that reducing your medication ultimately and reversal of diabetes is more important and that 17 weeks is a small price to pay? Whatever your thoughts are, jump onto Facebook, jump onto YouTube, jump onto iTunes, share your thoughts, come and join the conversation. I'm Andy at fundamentallyfit.co.uk. I'd love to hear your feedback on this podcast and this rather emotive topic. This has been episode number 24. Blimey, nearly missed one. Episode number 24. I'll be back next week, hopefully a cheerier topic. But until then, have a fantastic week and I will look forward to speaking to you next time.